A lot of you on the Twitter sphere will probably recognize. He needs no introduction. So John, good to see you. We have John Nosta here with us. Thank you so much for joining us in the Insights Lounge.
It seems like yesterday
that we did this last year.
Yeah, how time flies.
I know, it really does. So what's been going on in the last year for you, John? I know we were talking a little bit earlier about some of your more, I guess, your new ethos on innovation. And so I'd like to hear a little bit more about this.
Well, you know, the nice thing is that there is a sense of granularity to digital health. I think we're beginning to see some structure around function. You know, a few years ago it was a lot of interesting ideas, but now we're seeing things kind of move in the direction of the marketplace.
Sure.
So I've been studying innovation. Everybody wants to be an innovator, you know?
Yeah, well.
And interestingly, everybody thinks they're a little bit of Steve Jobs.
You think so?
Yeah, everybody wants to be that little bit of, you know, I'm sort of that rebel
really
entrepreneur,
cool.
I'm cool, I'm going to change the world. That's fine. It's a great place to be. But you know what? I think that as I look at the people who are here at Singularity,
they're
actually more like Steve Wozniak.
Okay.
But they don't know that. So Steve Wozniak was a scientist.
Right.
Who's here? Who are you talking to?
Oh.
You're talking to people who are scientists, who are tech people, medical school. You know,
yeah, so doctors. I'm talking to nurses. Yeah. I mean, it really.
So what do they know about the transition from innovation to marketplace? Nothing.
No.
Nothing.
Well, it depends.
Well, sometimes they do.
Sometimes they do.
Of
right.
course. But you know, in broad generalities, what I'm finding is innovators today are winking in the dark. So they know what they're doing, but no one else does.
Right.
So the empowerment of innovation through effective strategic thinking and communication is kind of what I've been doing.
Okay.
And
what does that mean? Unpack that for me. So like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, if you have a great idea, how do you articulate that idea? For example, I'll give you a brand, and you're going to tell me what that brand means, and you're going to do it in one word.
Okay.
All you get is one word. You ready?
God. Okay, I hope I know this brand.
You better, because I'm going to look pretty silly too.
Okay.
Volvo.
Safety.
Oh, bingo, you win. Well, isn't that interesting? Wasn't that easy?
Yeah, that's good branding.
So
good
if I'm gonna throw 3 tennis balls at you, how many are you gonna catch? None.
I was gonna say 2.
Maybe, I doubt it. I mean, if I can throw them at you, if I threw 1, you can catch it. And that's the same way with marketing. What we find is that clinicians, scientists, they often try to articulate their brand in the context of a product profile.
Right.
So they want to be safe, effective, once a day, well tolerated, whatever the gibberish is. They want to be all things to all people.
Right.
Well, what happens? They end up being nothing to no one.
Right.
So really it's important that when people try to consolidate their innovation around a positioning, that positioning is narrow. It's single-minded. Abraham Lincoln said, if you have 8 hours to chop down a tree, spend 6 of them sharpening your axe.
Okay.
And that's not happening. So what's happening is people are going to market or pushing their idea. And again, remember, ideas go to customers that sometimes are the consumers, sometimes they're clinicians,
especially here in healthcare.
Sometimes VC. You know, that's my first audience. I need the money, and I come and I babble about my idea. But if I can come back and say something that's unique and focused, it's real powerful. Now, there's another.
I do want to stop you there for a second because I want to ask a question. So, you know, as you're saying, you know, to kind of figure out what your story is basically and kind of stick to that story. You know, but how do you do that if you're an innovator, particularly if you are in a situation where you are fundraising and maybe you're not sure yet what the application is for what you've got? What would be your advice to, especially a startup in that space where it's like, well, we could go this way or we can go that way. We're still defining our model. It's kind of unknown, but we're running out of cash and we need some money. So what would be your advice be for them?
Well, at some point you have to move downstream or upstream a little bit more. So if your particular technologies around stem cells, you can articulate a vision of stem cells. You don't have to go all the way to life extension or life expansion. You can kind of pull up and say, we have a way of extracting stem cells. Let's see. Instead of getting them from organ donors or from blood donors, we can get them from placentas. So that's another way of positioning uniquely. So I think if you go upstream a little bit, but it's really important because, the trick is, when I tell you something, when I tell you that single-minded positioning like Volvo, you don't buy. It's not a buying decision. People think that my position is a buying decision. That position tells me to do one thing and one thing alone. It's solicit the notion, tell me more.
Okay.
That's all. That's what you want to do. And then your rest of your story comes through.
You can fill in those details.
So that's part of what I'm doing. I'm trying to understand that. But
Yeah.
then there's the strategic umbrella. You know, the idea of build it and they will come is the other big myth. So we live in the era of democratization of health, right? You've heard everybody says it, right?
Yeah,
but do they mean it? Are they right? They say patient centricity. That's the other one. It kills me. I don't think it's about patient centricity. I think that the patient is the end user often. That's a very, very important aspect of branding. But our strategic roadmap might have to go through the physician.
Yeah,
if I
or
have
the
a
payer.
really cool, absolutely through the payer. So this audience segmentation or stratification is real important because people think, well, I just have a really great idea and it will sell itself. So that's kind of what
Do
my
you think
challenges
that's unique
are.
in healthcare, or do you think that that's something that is more, I guess, globally applied in innovation?
Yes and no. I think it's harder in healthcare because there's so many stakeholders. It's such a complicated buying decision. You know, when I want to buy a car, I buy a car.
Well, because usually the person who's actually utilizing is necessarily the person who's buying. If
Exactly.
we're defining buying as the cash transaction to pay for it.
It's much more complicated.
Yeah, it's much more complicated.
So that makes it a struggle. And I think that people default to a more broad and abstract concept. You know, going back to that bundle of benefits.
Sure.
I'm going to position my product not on safety, but safety, inexpensive, really comfortable seats, great radio,
Right.
and all sorts of crazy things. So all of a sudden I have this bundle of benefits. What is a visual that I can use to sell that brand?
Right.
Well, what is safe and well tolerated and once a day and on formulary? Nothing, except for one thing, the smiling patient. And here we get to where you look around at a lot of the advertisements here for devices. It's a smiling patient. Give me a break. Number one, highly undifferentiated, right? It's generic. So if you really want to break out with innovation, if you want your idea to be different, you have to make sure that your marketing and communication is different too.
Well, for sure. And I think, what you're saying to me here, it's basically to stand for something. I mean, I've talked to a lot of different startups at a lot of different conferences. If I hear we're delivering the right care to the right patient at the right time on the right platform, one more time.
It's okay. Suppose I told you I have a car.
Because that means nothing. Because and what they've got though, their innovation or their idea, their product is something. And that it's selling it short by talking about it in this hyperbole.
And there you have the title of my talk today. It's about the innovator's biggest problem is being able to differentiate intellectually as well as scientifically. Look, if I told you I have a perfect car for you, it's the ideal car. Well, for you it's a Ferrari, for me it's a minivan. It means nothing to have an ideal car. You need to be granular and talk about it in that context.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think, as far as, I guess, other advice for innovators here, what else can you offer in terms of an approach to innovation? I know we were talking earlier about how you're getting a little bit idealistic, so tell me a little bit more about that.
Let's go up into the stratosphere a little bit. You know, we go back to let's say Jobs, right? Steve Jobs. Let's talk about Elon Musk as a prototypical innovator.
Sure.
You could argue if he is or if he isn't, whatever, but he's a tough guy. Right? You could even argue that he might be a bit of a bully. Right? I mean, he's aggressive. He knows he goes for it. He's tough. He's assertive. That's fine. Creativity is sometimes assertive. And a lot of people think that that's the way to be, is to have the conviction of your belief. That's fine, but look at another prototypical innovator like Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla transformed the world. He beat Thomas Edison in creating electric power, AC power. But Nikola Tesla was a fragile, frail man. And I think that's a lesson learned, that sometimes creativity is not a powerful big idea, a lightning bolt that strikes you in the head. Sometimes it needs to be coddled. And what we find is that these ideas live on the fringes of our lives. And we have these things called accelerators now, where we get everybody together and we try to come up with a big idea. Horrible, makes me crazy. Because what we do is we take an intellectual average. So you want the White House, I want the Red House. Let's make a pink house. Horrible. So that intellectual average, that push to the center, drives mediocrity. So you find innovation not in the center, but at the fringes. And sometimes it's a big, bold idea that strikes you in the head. Sometimes it's a fragile idea that has to be nurtured. And our job as innovators is to move the group to that new point, not to take that innovator and drag him into the mushy middle. so that's kind of what we do, and I think it's important because there's a lot of innovation, a lot of thinking, a lot of structure around it, and sometimes I think the structure is kind of wrong.
No, I agree. So last thoughts from you, John. Yep. I'm just curious to know, I mean, we're about halfway through XMed at this point. I mean, I can't believe it already. What are you looking forward to hearing? Is there anything that you're just dying to get an update on while you're here?
You know what? Number one, I always look forward to being surprised.
Okay.
So I go in and I say, I want to hear about nanoparticles,
surprised.
right? No, for me, I want to understand the human biome. We're hearing a lot of interesting talk about that.
Microbiome has been a big topic right now.
Is it real? Is it good? How can I do it? It's something that I can actually do, which I think is really cool. So there's a human personal component, number one. Number two, what's all this talk about AI? I'm a fan of AI from what I know.
Sure.
I'm very excited by it, but I hear that it's overblown. I'm hearing that it's not really as functional and practical in the practice of medicine. I kind of am a believer, so I'm really looking forward to hearing about machine learning, artificial intelligence, and are we really going to replace the doctor?
That's the question, right?
That's the question.
So if you guys, I'm going to just shout it out to the folks that are watching the live stream right now, and I want to encourage you, while you're taking a look at what we were talking about here, if you want to engage with any of us, please follow along on the Twitter feed or on Facebook. On Facebook, it's Singularity University's Facebook page, which is Singularity U. And on Twitter, it is the hashtag XMed. So feel free to weigh in. Make sure you tag John Nosta, because I'm sure he'll be retweeting you.
I will.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us here in the GuideWell Insights Lounge. Yeah, likewise. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Best of luck with your talk.